everybody. Welcome to another episode of Vinny Presents. Today, I'm so happy to have a person that I've been dying to interview, my man, Artie Pasquale. Artie, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing fine, Vince. We finally got together here. It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. You look good.
And
You got,
I mean,
you
we
got
talked.
Rocky. You got Rocky behind you on the set. The whole deal. How can we go wrong?
Yeah, listen, I told him to jump in there and do a little cameo, but he wouldn't respond. So at least we have this.
I met him recently. I did a little Tulsa King thing. He's a great guy.
Ah, nice, nice. I actually was an extra in Rocky Balboa, and I got to meet him and his brother Frank.
Yeah.
And I was an extra. He pulled me out of the crowd on 9th Street in the Italian Market, which you were at a couple of weeks ago, and I was all excited the whole year. I couldn't wait for it to come out. Yeah, I did a scene with Stallone, and guess what? I wound up on the cutting room floor. But that's the business, and I'm sure you know some of the sad parts of the industry. But now, how did we get started, Artie? All the way back in Federal Hill to where you are now. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Federal Hill. It's a Little Italy section of Providence, Rhode Island. Typical, like it was in a 3 tenement house. And typical Italian neighborhood. And without getting into too many details, I was well aware of what's going on in the neighborhood with all these characters. I was a big athlete at the time. I was involved in athletics, and I really enjoyed watching. I mean, I can go back to the point where I didn't even have a television. I'll tell you, my grandfather and my grandmother were listening to Mario Lanza and some great opera. But anyway, that's another story. But I always liked, old time movies with Humphrey Bogart and some of these characters. I don't know if you know them, but Richard Widmark. And I was really into it. I mean, I really was into it, but I was primarily involved in athletics. And as time went on, and when I got involved in high school, if you got involved in the arts, guys didn't look at you in those days in a certain way, or they looked at you in a certain way, especially if you're an athlete. So I didn't really get into it too much, but I did a couple of local plays, and it progressed from there. Even when I went to in high school, I did a few things. I did a few things locally, and then in college, I did some stage things, and it progressed. It progressed. I got married, moved to New Jersey, and I had a better chance to get involved in film and theater. Coming from being in New Jersey, it was easy to do that. So it worked out for me, And since the Sopranos, of course, it's helped me a lot, But I've learned a lot along the way, and I've done about 70 films now. They're not all Academy Award winners, but it was a great experience. Still is a great experience.
It's definitely worth noting. If you just take a look at your IMDb, you definitely are a busy guy. You've been busy, and I think that's a wonderful thing. And it just lends to the fact that you love what you do. This is a part of who you are, and it sounds like you felt that early on in your childhood. And you spoke about Mario Lanza. He grew up 3 blocks away from where I grew up on Christian Street. He grew up, I believe, on
Wow.
7th.
I used to play the piano a little bit, and my grandfather and grandmother, they couldn't speak hardly any English at all. They would sit on the couch and watch me play. And my grandmother said, if you learn how to play Return to Sorrento, we'll buy you a bicycle. So here I am learning how to play. And then one day it was 3 stories. I come downstairs and there's the bicycle in the kitchen. It was a great little story. I should write a little short story about it myself. But it was an old-fashioned 3 tenement house. And if you got a minute, I'll tell you a quick story about. I kid my daughter all the time because she talks about cell phone. Can you text? Can you do this? Can you do that? And I said, I hesitate to say when I was your age, because she'll say, Dad, there you go again. But we had one phone downstairs. My grandmother lived in the second floor. I lived in the first floor. My aunt lived in the 3rd floor. And we had one phone, and we had our own ring. So if it rang like dring, 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 they would say, don't pick it up. That's the Imperators next door. That's their ring. Because we were sharing phones at that time. So if it rang, we had a water pipe that went from the 1st floor all the way through the building to the 3rd floor. So if the phone rang, and if it was for my aunt on the 3rd floor, there was a spoon next to the water pipe. We'd hit the water pipe with the spoon. My grandmother would open her door. My aunt would open up her door. And I would say, Auntie Anna, it's for you. And she said, okay, tell them I'll be right down. So that was our party line,
That was your text message back then.
Yeah, it was it was simple but great. You know, now things are a little, as much as these things are great, these phones and stuff. I don't know if it does more harm than good, but anyway.
Yeah, it has its advantages, disadvantages too. It's true because I tell my little ones, there was a time where me growing up, I mean, every generation has it worse, but I had a 19-inch black and white TV with the hanger on top, trying to fix
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
There was no such thing as on demand. You had to you had to
Yeah,
go,
yeah.
which I loved. I used to love video stores. I used to beg my mom every day to go to the video store.
I just threw away probably 100 DVDs, and even the others before, prior to DVD,
That's
the cassette. Yeah, I mean, I have no reason to keep them, unfortunately,
man.
but it's a shame. But that's time's flying by. Who knows what's going to come next? But
So
anyway, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was gonna say, tell us where you finally like crossed that threshold from when you started to. You probably started out, I'm assuming, in like just local stuff, but when did you really cross that threshold leading up to The Sopranos?
Well, I did a few things in college. Once again, I was a big jock even in college, but I did some theater in college. And like I said, I got married. I moved to New Jersey, and I got involved with a few local guys that were involved in film, and they knew something about me, not a lot. And I did a lot of MC work, and some people were seeing me and doing the MC work say, you got to be an actor. You got to do more with acting. I know you do a little bit here, a little bit there. I'm doing this short film. Would you be interested? I said, yeah, sure, absolutely. And even a few student films. I progressed from the student film to short films to feature films, and it just got better and better and better. And I was just a lucky guy, and I befriended some of the more important people in the acting field. And the Soprano thing, it's an interesting story with the Sopranos. I befriended David Chase, who was, as your viewers probably know, was a creator writer for the Sopranos. And this was like 25 years before the Sopranos even came out. I met him in New Jersey, and these writers like to pick your brain, and they have these storage spots in their head as to when they're going to use this stuff or maybe use it or not use it. So I told him a true story about me in Rhode Island when I was living in that neighborhood. And this is the first episode. Some of your viewers probably don't know this, and most people don't know this. Uh, it's the story of how the Artie Bucco character got developed. Artie Bucco owned the restaurant. He and his wife and all the wise guys, for the sake of a better word, were going in that restaurant. And this is a true story. My aunt and uncle owned a little cafe in Providence, Rhode Island, in this Federal Hills section. And these guys would come in and they would make whatever they felt like eating, pasta and beans, whatever they asked for. But a fellow was going in there, and he was going in at 1 o'clock every day, and he was going to get killed in here. So if you remember in the first episode, Tony Soprano tries to get Artie Bucco and his wife to go on a vacation so that this guy couldn't go in there, because if the guy gets shot in the restaurant, they'd get a bad reputation and nobody would go there. So they asked him, and his wife said, my aunt in real life said, no, once you're indebted to these guys, you're always indebted to them. So no. So what did they do? Thinking the way that they think, Tony Soprano, and in real life, in my uncle's restaurant, the local guys blew up his restaurant as a favor to him. That's how they thought. So they said, you can collect the insurance, and that's what happened, And then when Peter Bogdanovich, the great director, interviewed David Chase, he said, this is an interesting story. Where'd you get this concept of a guy blows up his best friend's restaurant? He said, well, I have to tell you, a friend of mine from Providence, Rhode Island gave me that story. His name is Artie Pasquale. And that's how, and then I went from there with the Sopranos anyway. And down the road, I did a couple of things. Chase got a hold of me. And to make a long story short, I auditioned for a few spots, and I knew a couple of Chase's family members who knew me. And don't get me wrong, I didn't get the job because he was doing me a favor. Perhaps he was to a degree, but you had to prove yourself, So I ended up with this character. I did a bunch of episodes with Danny Grimaldi, who I was with recently. I was watching his play a couple of nights ago. Danny Grimaldi played Patsy, and we were like a comedy team going around making collections. But of course, The Sopranos has really helped me a lot. We do a lot of events together, and people, like during COVID, Soprano got rejuvenated because people were staying home. Kids that couldn't watch The Sopranos were all of a sudden could watch it. Kids who weren't even born at the time were watching it. So it'll go on forever. I think it's just one of those, they call it the greatest written drama story series in the history of television. So
I would say, Artie, that I have to agree with you because I'm surprised in a good way of the love and the return to The Sopranos after. I mean, when that came out, I was maybe 19, 20 years old, and I used to watch it faithfully. I hung out with guys from the neighborhood. We would all watch it.
Yeah. 9 o'clock, everybody ran home at 9 o'clock, no matter where they were,
It was great, man. And I'm really happy to see that there's been a revival of it. And it's great to see all these, like, for instance, my buddy Sal, who's my partner in this project that we're doing. He's real tight with Dave Proval, which I'm sure you know. And you see all these different actors that are coming back, and you're seeing them in the conventions. It's a beautiful thing. I love it.
Recently had a thing called Paisan Con, which it wasn't just a Goomba thing. It had a lot of people who were involved in show business or in athletics who happened to be Italian. And Lorraine Bracco was there, and a bunch of people were there, a lot of the cast members. So it does go on. I mean, every so many weeks, something's happening involving The Sopranos, And I know some of the heavy hitters, they've been doing their own thing on the road. So it's just a wonderful, wonderful experience. And David Proval, now he's one of my favorite guys. We're very, very close. He's living in California. For your viewers that don't remember who he was, he had those evil eyes. He played Richie Aprile, and he would look right into your eyes. And I did a couple of scenes with him in a couple of movies that I did. One was called The Brooklyn Banker. If your viewers ever want to watch the movie, it's not bad, called The Brooklyn Banker. It was directed by Federico Castelluccio, who played Furio. And Paul Sorvino is in it, but I did a couple of scenes with Proval, and he got into my eyes. I tell you, he makes you just melt. I mean, and then he gave me, just to show you as an aside what kind of guy he was. We had a scene where I'm sitting in a social club, and he's going to come in and go talk to Paul Sorvino, and I didn't have a line right then. I'm reading the paper. Now the scene was broken down. It was rearranging the lighting and the audio. So my name was Philly in the movie. Now, can I curse on this show? I don't know if I'm allowed to curse. Right. Well, I'm reciting. I'm quoting him, so don't take it from me.
We got a swear jar. You can Venmo me. It's all right.
So anyway, I'll clean it up a little bit. Anyway, he walks by and he comes over to me. He didn't have to do this. No, nothing's happening. We're just sitting down and they're rearranging stuff. And he comes up to me and he says, "Hey, Philly," he had that nasal drilling name, so sound to him. He says, "Remember when we were playing basketball and you threw me the ball and I threw it over the effing fence? Remember that?" And then he taps me on the shoulder and he leaves. I was saying, wow, no, he was helping me out as well as himself. So now we're going to shoot it. So he comes walking in, and I guess he wanted me to have a little thought about who this character was walking in, as well as helping himself. So he points over to me and gives me like kind of a wink, like, "How you doing, kid?" That kind of stuff. And he walked by. Now, he didn't have to do that at all. He did that to help me and to help himself and to help the scene. That's the kind of guy he was. He's a regular guy. He looks like Columbo in real life. He's not one of these flashy West Coast types. But, he's been around. He did Shawshank Redemption. He did Mean Streets. But he's a great guy. He's just a regular guy.
No, he's a consummate actor, man. He's very talented. As you know, I mean, anybody's watching, and everybody says it's a shame he didn't have a longer run in The Sopranos because he had a great character.
Oh, yeah. If your viewers remember him, he was Janice's husband, and she shot him at the table, right now.
Richie Aprile.
Yeah, Richie Aprile, yeah.
So
and
now
the other thing you got me on The Sopranos, but I talk about it all the time. And it's amazing. There's a cult of people that know everything about The Sopranos. Everything. I mean, I was just, I did about a dozen episodes. Anyway, people will come by me and say, "Hey, Bert, how's Spencer?" They don't even know my name. I was Artie Pasquale. Hey, Bert, how's Spencer? Now, Spencer was my dog. You know, who the hell knows what my dog? But my dog in the scene where I get killed by Van Zandt, he strangles me. The dog is barking and barking and barking and barking. So that's how it got its name. But they remember everything. I've gone in restaurants and people would recite my lines. I don't, it's amazing. It's just amazing. So it'll live on forever.
Yeah, and the thing is you got to play along, otherwise you'll break their heart.
Yeah. I mean, some of these guys, they want a ton of dough to do this and do that. I was so blessed. I'll take a picture with anybody. I'll sit down with them. I have a lot of fun with them. It's really, I mean, I was just a lucky guy, you know. And the other thing about The Sopranos, and I'm sure you're aware of it, is that David Chase was able to perceive who he wanted to have in his show. And there are no pretty faces, if you know. There's no George Clooney types. They're like regular guys off the street. Like Tony Soprano, even Gandolfini, very few people knew that much about him. He had done a few movies. And then I heard about, how he got to pick Steven Van Zandt. Somebody told me that he was at home watching the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and Steven Van Zandt, I think, was sponsoring the Young Rascals. And his David Chase, he says, I've heard this story. He supposedly told a few people.